Hey Marcus, thank you for being on the podcast. I'm super excited to have you here. We met in San Francisco. Now we are recording a podcast. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. We had a good chat in an event, and here we are continuing it.
Yeah, I got fascinated by your product and the detail and the thoughtfulness you had behind it. And then Marcus is the right guy for the this design and business podcast. So today's theme is going to be unlocking inner potential through mindful UX with Marcus. He's the founder and CEO of Olo, and I'm super excited to have him here. And we are going to speak about his product and then his journey. And he has a diverse background of being a musician and artist, and you kind of bring that to your product development, which is very fascinating. And more and more products these days are designed to get people addicted and going away from that mindfulness and well-being. So you're kind of bringing that in the product space. So super excited to have you here. So a little bit about Marcus, and then I'll give it up to Marcus to speak about his journey. So Marcus is founder and CEO of Olo, and then he has background in music and arts and is currently based in San Francisco. He originally comes from Finland. I'm eager to learn more about that culture as well in the upcoming chats and stuff like that. Welcome to the podcast, Marcus. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey of being a founder.
Yeah, thank you, John. I started my journey as a composer, musician, and then sound artist or media artist, sound designer later on. For me, the beginning of my, teens and 20s was really just creating music, composing it in various bands, projects, did some film music, theater productions, some dance and performance art. And I think it was a lot about first designing sound or composition was my way of exploring what's possible. And then when I went more and more towards performance art and things like that, it really started to be designing an experience. So I would often think from a blank page of just imagining yourself in an audience in a room as like, what would I like to experience? How could the drama arc be here? How could something be interesting or surprising? And I really enjoyed the live interaction with musicians. So there would be a combination of compositions and improvisations, and how the compositions could kind of also answer to the improvisation going on.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the foundation for me. And then going into digital products from there, it continues to be about the human experience. Like, how do we essentially experience ourselves
Mhm.
through some kind of impulse?
Yeah, seems to care a lot about like human experience and the user experience, right? And when I saw your app, I was like, it is very rare to find founders and CEO who deeply care about so much. So tell us a little bit about your app and what does it do and how it's like beneficial for people.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I really was wanting to just create a simple, really fast time to value experience of taking a moment with yourself.
Mhm.
A lot of people have used it for reducing anxiety, stress, or attention fatigue, but also entering like clarity of mind, flow state, or creativity. And I think the really ultimate value that we're after here is getting to know yourself better, having that moment with your inner life, because I believe that that's where all the well-being and health, but also all the great ideas and good decision making and all of that comes from. So it's for intronauts, people who want to have a journey inside.
Yeah, I think that self-awareness is the key to like understand the world better, and that's what like brings us so much of peace. And we live in a very chaotic world, right? And I actually
Hmm.
used your app this morning, and I was like, I need to set things up. I need to get this going. It's
Yeah.
like, let me try Marcus's app. And I felt very calm and I was able to do a lot of things done. So
Hmm.
I really love that simplicity of the app you have. It's not like, square boxes or anything. You kind of bring that like very unique design style. And I've seen less of that in nowadays in the products. I've been doing this for this 10 years.
Hmm.
So like, what was your inspiration for that simplicity in your product, and how was that journey to come to that simplicity?
Well, of course, I did like research with what was out there, and I felt quite dissatisfied with it. And also talked to other people, and I was curious, like, why is all these wellness apps so low retention rates, or why is the content often quite static and flat? And we're kind of asking people to do concentration meditation on top of a static content, and it felt a bit. And what I heard from people is it feels like work. It feels like somebody's asking you to sit down. It feels like school in a way. And I understand the values of that, and I've done a lot of meditation and all of that myself. Like, I used to do 100 concerts a year as a musician,
Oh wow,
and
100.
that's really intense for the body and mind. So I needed to figure out through meditation, yoga, neuro-linguistic programming, lucid dreaming. I've kind of explored the whole palette of and biohacking, early form of it. So it's I was really interested myself. And first of all, what's the how can I figure this thing out? And essentially, like, my approach was a blank page. So I just actually just had a paper and pen in front of me and closed my eyes. Like, if anything could be possible, what would I want an app to do? Kind of try to leave everything behind. And I didn't have much baggage from like existing design, so I was kind of like a fresh for it. And I came up with some meta design principles to start with. So I didn't even go straight to it, but I just thought, like, how's the experience? How do I want it to feel like? I want it to feel like it's somehow alive. There's just one thing at the time guiding you forward. I want it to be quite audio focused, and that most of the kind of experience would actually happen with closed eyes, because I thought that staying with the screen and interacting, that's kind of, it often drives distraction or disembodiment. We kind of cut off, we might forget that we have a body. We just kind of like mentally fixated on this tiny screen. So for me, the app was just and use it the minimum to launch it, to be able to navigate it. But I think I already then I thought, like, the future of user experience and user interfaces, I think, is generative, and it's not anymore a remote control with 1,000 buttons and menus and things, because we've lived in this information flood. Everything is this input, 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 and we don't have so much time to digest that input. We don't have a lot of those empty moments during the day. So I just thought, why don't we just make the lowest possible barrier of entry of putting the phone away and close your eyes?
Wow. That's what's very fascinating. Like, we designed so much the product to be like hooked to you,
Mm-hmm.
but then you design the opposite of it. It's like take the phone out of the experience,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get embedded in that sounds and music. And then I think like it comes from your music background. There were like different sounds and different like there's animal sound, there's like a bird chimes. Like, what's like your reason behind like why do you choose like different sounds and stuff like that?
Yeah, so when I met my co-founder, Katarina, who's a somatic therapist and mental health professional, we already have worked now close to 10 years together. And we went around the world to high biodiversity places, recording nature sounds in 3D and then designing sound journeys with music to it, and tested it with over 10,000 people so far. So listen, a lot of feedback about what's the therapeutic potential of immersive listening experiences and somatic education. So somatic meaning the approach of feeling your body, listening to what it says. In one way, your body is a compass. if you calibrate it well, it will help you make the best decisions of your life. You know, like people talk about gut feeling for a reason, because it will inform you something beyond your maybe rational mind. Like our subconscious mind has the biggest CPU in a way, you know. So we need to just build the bridge there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to these places. We held a lot of workshops and retreats. We went to schools and hospitals and caregiving facilities, work well-being, to just see what's possible. The problem was that it worked everywhere. And as a small team, we're like, okay, where do we focus on? And then we really started to hone in like, okay, high achievers who understand that the next unlock in their life is more the inner process and understand knowing themselves better to access more, you know, creativity, flow states, better decision making, all of these kind of high cognition abilities. But it really actually comes from bottom up, from regulating the nervous system. And that's how we chose the sounds. So we thought about like, you actually need to take your nervous system to the gym too.
Mm-hmm.
and
Interesting.
and that's why the sound journey is not static and flat, but actually a lot of stuff happens. Because if you think about it, if you're stressed out, your mind is in a hyper speed, thoughts are running, and if you give yourself something like very static, it's not gonna cut through. It's your mind is gonna be so much more active than the content. So that's why we need to have a soundscape that kind of meets you where you are, and then starts to it's like a sensory modulator, neurosensory modulator, that starts to bring then your attention, you know, down or up if you feel like you're tired and fatigued. So it's really, sound happens in time. And often we talk about sound like it would be a picture, like it's just one sound forever. But people don't realize that the whole point about why sound works or music works is what happened before makes this sound in a certain way. And then everything is a sequence of one thing leading to another, with a perfect balance of novelty and familiarity, you know, tension and release and things like that.
When you were speaking about this, like people who want to like unlock their potential, and then like most of my audience are like designers, creators, and founders, and
Mm-hmm.
many people are trying to be all three of them at once right now.
Mm.
I'm a designer, I'm creating podcasts, so many people are like trying to unlock their potential to do more.
Mm-hmm.
Even with their full-time job, they like freelance and they like create content. So how can this app be like beneficial to like you said, it helps you build that that intuition and that gut feeling when you have
Mm.
like better awareness. Like what's you also mentioned this product. I read that your product is like evidence based and stuff like that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's like the science behind unlocking that potential,
Mm-hmm.
and how does that translate that into your UX of your product?
Yeah. In a simplest way possible, it's to feel more.
Mm,
Olo is a Finnish word that means feeling and being. And I believe that all good doing stems from well being, being in coherence with what's right for you. And it's been studied also that there's a lot of buildup of stress from unfelt feelings. Like when we're kind of out of our path in some ways, there's this uncomfortableness. And if we're not willing to feel it, it's just going to build up and build up and build up.
mm,
And at least personally for me, the biggest unlocks in my life has happened when I've actually allowed myself to feel something that might have been even uncomfortable in the moment, or just something unknown. And the feeling, the release of whether it be fear or guilt or shame or any kind of blockage, it just opened up that capacity to understand deeper. And then often with that understanding comes some really precious information of like, oh wow, this is what I'm gonna do. Or actually I have all these things on the table, but this one thing I'm gonna double down on.
mm,
Um, and it's hard to get to that state if we're busy all the time externally. And there's so many advices in the world, uh, and they're all good, but are they good for you? So it's a lot about this kind of like simplifying of, okay, this actually matters to me. It has more resonance, internal resonance. um, I mean, neuroscience is going really fast forward. We are all the time, the it's getting more popularized. People understand nervous system regulation, parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, and I think that's great that we're starting to address it from that level.
Mhm.
So a lot of it is based on that understanding and simply bringing awareness inside and having an experience. What we often talk about is mind wandering.
Mhm.
So in the concept of meditation, you would talk about that mind wandering is sometimes something you try to avoid, and you kind of shepherd your mind to like, no, be in presence, focus on breathing, or things like that. And actually, I think that we should allow your mind wander. We should allow to let go once,
Yeah.
um, because that's how we actually digest information, integrate it, and that's where you know that kind of inner encyclopedia of what is my truth, what matters for me. That's how it builds up to let the mind wander, then reflect on like what what does this mean?
Mm. Yeah, I think I it kind of uh, touched my heart so much when you said like let your mind wander,
Yeah.
because we try to like, okay, it's thinking too much, let me like hold it back, let me not think too much, let me just focus on execution. And I
Mm-hmm.
think allowing our brain to like, it's okay, wander and then like come back to the focus, that's very essential,
Mm-hmm.
because we try to like suppress, right?
Mm.
And that like adds up. And I think once you kind of let it wander and then focus, and then that's where you unlock the potential.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of UX, right? That
Hmm.
you explore first, like what are we actually trying to do before you start designing and doing their finished thing, because the design is just the end of the process. But in the beginning, we really need to think, and it's not just design thinking. I think it's design feeling. Like what's the experience? What's the feeling when you interact with this product, and how can it be? You mentioned the hooked thing, like, yeah, this whole wave of apps stemmed from social media was this kind of hooked playbook, like. And I think when we design for health and wellness, we cannot lean on those dark patterns. We have to kind of ask like, how do we not prey on the human frailties, but actually help people to use technology in an empowering way, where they have agency over their own attention.
Hmm. Yeah, I think like you come from such a very different background, and you bring that like perspective like design. I feel like you're like kind of like you are creating like new terminologies that I think the tech and the design industry needs more. I feel like I feel like mindful UX could be like the
Mm,
coin uh, formed by Marcus, and then you mentioned like design thinking was a design feeling. And I think like we in the design industry, what I'm saying is kind of we are losing that a little bit, right? Like we are looking more at the outcome of it and not through the process. And then I think our tech industry needs more CEOs and founders like you, who kind of understand that design is like that a process, and like what are we trying to create the experience here, and then like going through that process to come to that outcome. So that's like mind opening for me. And I think I've seen the design industry like change so much over time.
mm,
And then we are kind of like heading towards like execute because of the fast pace of our product development and stuff.
mm,
But then like you bring that perspective of like, okay, let's step back and think what experience we are trying to create here, and kind of go through that process. Yeah, I think I'm going to change some of my approaches. So this is good. So switching gears to like more of a business conversation,
Mm-hmm.
when doing a business, it's really hard to balance that experience goals or like being that thoughtful with your
Yeah.
business goals. And investors might like ask like, hey, what's the retention? What's the engagement?
Yeah.
How do you like balance that?
Well, I think you need to be really honest about your values, and then you have to be really innovative in figuring out how can you build something successful with those values. I think there's a lot of headwinds of consumers realizing that, okay, I want to change my habits. I actually care about these things. There's so much more awareness of this, people thinking, I'm now addicted to quick dopamine and I don't want that. What is the alternative? What can I find? How can I build those healthy habits? And making decisions, like you're not just optimizing for being hooked for and high engagement, you actually want to optimize for great results. And if you think about it from a business perspective, a lot of the problem
Mhm.
with these kind of apps has been that they have a low retention or low lifetime value because it's kind of a
Mm,
just one app. But then what? Like, what can you give more? But if you think about it more like community as a business model, where you build value that compounds on itself through having something more to offer. Like, we are not just an app, we also, I've built a retreat center, so I know how like in real life businesses work. We have a community, we have professionals that want to become Olo guides
mhm,
so they can host live events. And through that, you actually start to offer a path to the user where maybe you come to the app first to just reduce stress and anxiety, insomnia, things like that. And then you realize, oh, wow, I'm actually getting more and more creative. Then you go to a live event. I want to meet other people like that. And you realize, like, wow, this is actually the lifestyle I want, because maybe you're not anymore interested of alcohol being the social object, but wellness.
mm,
And then it starts to be a lifestyle thing. And maybe you say to yourself, oh, there's a retreat coming or some kind of event. I want to be part of that. Or there's some other additional product and service, like we have eye mask coming up, and things like that. So I think it starts to actually make the customer acquisition like cheaper, because you're not just relying on pushing ads on people, but there's more of a pull effect and word of mouth effect. And then because it's not just a one app subscription, the lifetime value starts to deepen. So
mm,
I actually think that it makes way more sense as a business
mhm.
than kind of getting people hooked on a one thing that they will then eventually, actually it will taper out, and people will churn away from. And when people churn away, they're not coming back.
I think you are one of the rare founders who can like balance that thoughtfulness, experience design along with like business. You mentioned about it does like reduces the customer acquisition cost, and nowadays I'm seeing the product development going more towards like community centric.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this saying, build a community before you build a product. And I think like you are kind of positioning your product in that similar direction. And then, you know, it's not just an app, but it's everything that happens outside the app, right?
Mm.
And I always thought like the user experience design is not within the app, it happens at outside the app.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the future of user interface design is no interface, right?
Yeah.
And then you mentioned in our call earlier, like you just wanted to make a blank app, right? Can we
Oh yeah.
explore that?
Yeah, that was also one
Yeah.
direction, because like essentially, I mean, Olo is not an app.
Hmm.
Olo is an experience. And
Mm,
we were thinking, what's the best vehicle to deliver this experience? First, we did it in workshops and retreats that were like weekend or 1 week long. Then we did it in events that were 3 hours long.
Hmm.
Then we did it online in an event that was 1 hour long. Then we put in an app that could be just 30 minutes or 15 minutes or 5 minutes long. So it's kind of about reducing and reducing
Hmm.
in like how quickly can you deliver that value and how can you create that micro moment anytime, anywhere. And so one was like, do we need, is app actually the best? Because all we need is it to store the essential information, have access to the sound, have a good launch, have a good reflection. And one idea was like, maybe it should be all audio and we just don't want any visuals at all.
Hmm.
And yeah, back then didn't exist any AI pins or anything. There was like no hardware alternative really, even though we like, should we just create our own little device or something like that? Um, so that was a consideration. Let's do a black app that there's no visuals at all and it's just audio only. We didn't end up doing that in the end, but I think that thought exploration helped us to really map the terrain and have like the extreme on that side. And then it helped us maybe to build that kind of minimalism. The first version of the app had more things, so we be kind of reductionist, and now we're starting to bring new features in, but I think with a completely different view and mindfulness because of the experiences we've had before. And I'm super excited about the future of UX because I think that's going to be generative,
Hmm.
and we're having this inflection point of going from the flood of information to curated information to, like you said, um, you don't need to do anything basically. The technology will understand you to the level where it doesn't need you to make so many choices all the time, because choices are really taxating for the mind.
Hmm.
I believe we have limited amount of choices in life, and I for sure don't want to waste my choices on some minute details of an app, like do I click that or that button.
Hmm. Yeah, you spoke about some interesting topics around. That's something I personally feel very passionate about. Is like reducing things instead of like adding things. And
Hmm.
nowadays you see product like adding features again features, and then the customer is like, I don't know how to use this,
Yeah.
right? And then they overwhelm so the customer with like combining so many multiple journeys.
Yeah.
But I think as a UX designer, I always thought like, what is that one thing they're trying to come to do here? Can they do it?
Hmm.
And many tech professionals and like designers specifically are scared nowadays of AI.
Hmm.
But you brought that interesting perspective. It's exciting future, and that I kind of see the same. I kind of made this post the other day on LinkedIn. It's like, what was that? So um, yeah, so it's more of the interfaces are going to like understand us better, and then
Yes.
that's a opportunity for us to create new experiences and kind of
Hmm.
challenge the thoughts. And so we often associate design with the medium because we think, oh, the UI, the website, the app, but design is solving, and it's more of like that medium always changes, right?
Mm.
Tomorrow we might not have apps, but
Hmm.
an experience we can create without an app too. So I think like you are kind of heading into the right direction in the future.
Hmm.
That's awesome. And you also mentioned like you went through like an iterative process, right? And in the design industry we like fancify it and like design thinking, prototype, ideate, but you kind of like naturally did it without following this framework. What was the process of like going through that discovery, define, and ideating and all that stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was really that paper and pen and imagination,
Mhm.
and then getting to then I just went to Figma, and I had a help from a really good designer to kind of facilitate the discovery process of how it could look like. And we went, it was a very pleasurable, very even artistic, just drawing on inspirations of what we wanted to be. So it was just a lot of time on that kind of prototyping and how would it feel, and then of course getting it in the hands of people as soon as possible, um, getting that essential feedback. um, I learned so much about, because I kind of saw the quite far, uh, what about the product should be, and we're still on that trajectory. But it was pretty difficult at first to like, what's the first experiment we want to do?
Mhm.
What's the kind of minimum we can build and go from there? And I think the hardest thing has been to remember to somehow document your thinking, so that when you're then finally there, you can look back of like, did we do what we were, am I still,
Mhm.
at least I believe that often in the beginning, if you really take time to listen to yourself, there's so much wisdom in that initial
Mhm.
seed of the thought, and it's important not to lose it. It's important to remember to come back to ask, are we doing what we set out to do? Has the mission changed, and what have we learned? I think kind of like mapping
Mhm.
what have we learned
Mhm.
has been the most important thing in the process. And yeah, not having any ready templates of how the process goes has been, I don't know, I guess it has its upsides and downsides.
That's very interesting. I always try to like bring like systems and processes in my design process,
Hmm.
but then you kind of take that like let's not like have that templatized process, right?
Yeah.
And it has helped you to like be more creative and stuff like that. That's very interesting. Like having no process is also a process.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's. I mean, a lot of my processes come from producing music. So what I
Interesting.
used to do is like, we book a day in a studio.
Mm-hmm.
We get the musicians. We have an engineer who's really capable of doing stuff fast, and we would record an album in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we would record and mix an album in a day. So I think sometimes being able to hold the totality of the process in as short time space as possible, that you be able to run the whole thing through, at least helps me, because then there's less chances of getting distracted, diverted, lost on the way, if you're being able to just like work really fast. So I would often have calls with the designer, and we wouldn't talk about what we're doing. We would just do it in the call. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so we would just ideate, execute, and get to the finish design in the call.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately I would be like, mock up, testing it in my hand, giving it to somebody, get their feedback, and the next day we'd be already in so it's like that was really, I think, where the mindset came from, like creating jazz records,
Mm-hmm.
or that kind of music where you try to capture the authenticity of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I guess a lot of the process comes from that, of just trying to get out of your own way and not overthink things, but really try to just plow through through the process.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Then does
yeah.
that make any sense? I mean, maybe you have really different.
No, it's like makes sense. I'm like I feel like I'm learning design again, because like is you in that discovery process, in that workshop process, like you kind of like design it on the go. I think that's something that I want to bring in my process. Like when we are like together with like product managers and like designers and researchers and all this stuff, like can we come up with some kind of artifact at the meeting itself, right?
Mm.
Instead of waiting another 2 weeks to come and then some changes happen.
Yeah,
So
because the tools are so good now, so
yeah.
you actually can do that. And with
Hmm.
AI, it's even faster, right?
Hmm.
To prototype things.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. I think I'm like I'm when I listened to you, I was like, it's such a good point, such a good point. I'm thinking of like many people in the industry need to know this. So it's like that's very interesting. Like everything I seeing, I'm seeing design from a very different perspective, because like we get like caught up in that like build fast approach, and then trying to think like what we learned over the years, right? Like we kind of get stuck with that. So it kind of seeing through like your perspective, it kind of like is very interesting, and then like unlocking a lot of like, I should include this in my process, I should include the process.
Hmm.
And like as a musician myself, like I kind of understand like there is a method to it, but there is no method to it as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting coming from like a music background to applying that to your product, and then yeah, building a successful like company. That's a lot you're doing there. That's awesome. What are like your next steps and your future thoughts for your product and company? And one more thing I wanted to add was I think this could be our tagline. It's like Olo is not an app; it's an experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
yeah.
For the future, I we have a product hunt launch coming somewhere around mid June. Maybe when this comes out, we already have the exact date.
Hmm.
So we're really working hard to ship something new there. Um, we are starting actually like more community activations. We've been doing live events, but now my co-founder Karina, who's a somatic therapist, and she has so much experience
Hmm.
being with people, doing over 10,000 one-on-one sessions and a couple hundred retreats and workshops. So she will start like a bi-weekly live call, which is really practical
Hmm.
and doing um, somatic awareness exercises live with people. So I think that's something that people will enjoy a lot, and that's part of the subscription, that it's
Hmm.
again not just an app, but part of it is the community and getting access to somebody who's so experienced.
Hmm.
um, we will have live events in New York, LA, and in the Bay Area. And then there's already next level things of the roadmap
Hmm.
coming up. Um, there's so many exciting things. I think soon we can run small LLMs on device, and that unlocks completely different kind of speed, privacy type of interaction. The Olo app works offline, and that's kind of great thing about
Hmm.
it too. That if you're in an airplane or wherever, like, and I guess that's like one of the interesting memes or things people talk, like, how can you just do some simple thing in your phone without getting distracted to all the other notifications that are gonna kind of jump at you. Like, I just went to check what time is it, but I lost 1 hour in looking at all the other things.
Yeah.
So I think designing guardrails under around your own attention, I think it's going to be bigger and bigger thing where people are really proactive about. There's this maybe a good analogy. The story of Ulysses when
Hmm.
he goes into the sea. There's this part with sirens, and there he knows that they're gonna be so, um, you know, calling him, and that he will not be able to resist himself, and then
Hmm.
he will go to this island and be lost forever. But that, I think the point was that he then asked his crew to um, strap him into the mast of the ship, so he would be able to, call to hear the thing, but would not be able to get out. And so, what I'm trying to say with this is that proactively designing habits and how we use technology, so that when we're in that autopilot, we don't fall into the traps.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger thing. So that's why I'm excited about like offline.
Mm. That's very interesting. That's especially like around setting guardrails
Mm.
around attention, that seeks attention. I used to work for this healthcare company, and then one of my manager had told me about he wanted to like think more about how we can focus better, especially like in open workspaces. And then like, this notifications and everything you get are like attention pockets. They like suck you in, and
Yeah.
then you get sidetracked. And then when I was using your app today this morning as well, like I was like meditating, and then I got like a notification, oh, update your Apple Watch. And I went to update an Apple Watch. So I've been also like this year, my focus has been to how can I build better focus and do like better deep work.
Mm.
And so I've like offed all my notifications, and I do like time blocking when I'm like working on something. So that's something that I think we are getting so distracted by technology, right?
Mm.
This notification here, notification there, here, everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think having that, unlocking that inner potential and awareness, kind of like be thoughtful of like, hey, what are you getting distracted, and how can we build that focus and everything. And then one more thing you mentioned about like offline and live events. Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Like I'm such a social media person, but I found like most meaningful connections offline.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I met you in a conference, we did this podcast offline. So I think it's very, I think that's kind of, we are like, I know we are now like in a hybrid model,
Hmm.
but more networking, relationship building, or finding anything. I think offline has a lot of potential and opportunities there. One, I would love to ask, many designers, creators, founders, they're trying to do a lot of things nowadays, right?
Hmm.
And the thing is, we can't not do it also. I think it's becoming like a thing now. Like if you are a product designer, you're
Hmm.
creating content as well to get like visibility for what you do.
Hmm.
And it also creates a lot of mental stress, like, right? Like what do you recommend tech professionals, heading into this like busy life schedule and hustle culture and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think we're all trying to figure this out.
Hmm.
Me too. Like it's not always easy because we're in some ways in this transition period in the ways of working. Sometimes we still have habits that we're doing knowledge work like a factory worker, you know, and at the same time we're seeing that the we will not win by grind, like automation, AI, robotics, all of these things is just gonna take a lot of the grind away, and what's left for us humans is gonna be, you know, unique insights, creative decision making, communication skills with other humans, and finding authenticity in our point of view,
Hmm.
because that's something that AI doesn't have a unique point of view. It has
Mm.
maybe all the point of views or none. Um, and I believe, even though it sounds really cliche, it really boils down into knowing yourself, because a lot of it, we all have a unique experiences and a point of view that has the ultimate value unlock
Hmm.
for your work, for your creativity. And it doesn't need to take a 1 week retreat to go to drink ayahuasca in Amazon or do some other extreme, um, you know, 10-day vipassana. Even though those
Hmm.
are useful, I think you can really cultivate that thing in micro moments
Hmm.
of safety during your everyday life. So taking the habit of just every day finding a moment to kind of zoom out and connect with your inner life, because if we invest in that, that's gonna launch you to that deep work state.
Hmm.
Because in the end of the day, what we all are trying to do, I believe, is having one moment every day where we get the most valuable stuff done, the kind of deepest deepest value that only we can deliver.
Hmm.
And so I believe it's a combination of, like, for me, future work is leaning back, closing your eyes, and allowing the answer come to you, and then being really good at using existing tools
Hmm.
to execute. delegate, and get the things done in a focused way.
Yeah, I think you bring up such good points. Especially, you mentioned about all boils down to self awareness and knowing who you are. And when I recently published my book, and I wrote it because many designers were struggling to get jobs, and the
Hmm.
market is very brutal right now.
Yeah.
But there are jobs, there are opportunities, honestly. But they didn't know the story they want to tell about who they are, what they do,
Mm.
and the hiring person or any person would get confused, like what are this what's their story. So I think when you see like mature professionals, they have like a strong awareness who they are, what they do. So it's like easier for them to like find jobs. It's not just like only senior people get jobs and juniors don't get job. I
Hmm.
think that awareness plays a key role for you to
Mm.
unlock opportunities and even land opportunities and get jobs, and even in this challenging market. So I think that you kind of boiled it down to like knowing yourself. So that's very interesting. I think that's like the core answer that question. What unlocks the inner potential is self-awareness.
Mm.
So that's very interesting. Yeah, I think this has been like my mind is just like opening from like so many corners, from music to business to design. And I think good design is about people. And I think you kind of carry that like philosophy with your
Mm.
products you do. So that's very interesting. And then, I feel like our tech industries needs more founder and CEOs like you. So that's awesome. So do you? So I'll also include all the links to Marcus's products and live events and everything in the description and the show notes. So do like subscribe, and I'll share also this clips different social media.
Mhm.
I'm super excited about like sharing this. There's like so many good nuggets there.
Mm.
Do you have any final take and thoughts that like you love to share with? You like to share with us? Yeah.
Well, I think there's two things because of this unique audience that you have. I love to hear people's unfiltered feedback of their first experience um, with Olo. So I'm really like the channel is open to write me in any LinkedIn or other forms of just getting in touch, because I love to hear what's the human experience of each one. And in a broader sense, I'm really optimistic about the future of design and human experience. I think that we're in this moment where technology can again help us being even more human and focus in our, potential. So I would just encourage everyone to take this opportunity in this kind of platform shift that we're experiencing now to look further ahead, because with the speed of movement that we have, we can put quite ambitious goals up there,
Mhm.
and actually we're going to see so much change in the next years to come. So it's a good time to be brave, and everybody can build um, an exciting side project that is your best calling card, I think,
Mhm.
for who you want to work with or what you want to build. So yeah, I know it's a very general thought, but I'm just really excited about what's possible, uh, in the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, I think you kept telling about the future of products like generative, and I definitely like agree with it. And I personally see that, the need for personalized
Mm-hmm.
experience becomes more and more important. And then contextualizing information, right? It's not like throwing all the information there. How can we like progressively disclose information? So I think it's an exciting time to like build products. And one thing I saw in your Marcus was like you combine who you are, what you believe in your past, with like the products and services you're designing. I think that's so essential. Like a lot of the founders sometimes it's like, what's shining in the market, right? Like,
Mm.
let's try to build that, but then they don't have touch with like who they are along with the, what product they build. So it's because, like you said, it's like a long journey. It's not
Hmm.
like 6 months launch like a AI chatbot and raise investment, but it's more of like how do you build an ecosystem around it. So that's very interesting. And we'd love to know where can people find you, connect with you, and people who are listening on Substack. There's a comment section. You can share any feedback to Marcus on his product or connect with LinkedIn. You said,
Hmm.
what are like other ways people can connect with you? Where can they can download their apps? Yeah, tell us like about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the main things is olo.app, so olo.app, and then olo.beehive.com is a weekly newsletter around these topics. If that's in like a good format to be in touch, and then those live events, like we put them up in Luma.
Mhm.
They're going to be in the newsletter. Same in my LinkedIn. I'd love to see people out there in real life too. I think, like you said, the best things that happen to us still happen in real life, I think, and online is super important, but we need to like have the breadcrumbs to in real life interactions too, because we are a social animal, and it's different when we breathe the same air once in a while.
Interesting. I don't want to add more to it. It's like such a wonderful ending, and I really loved having you on the podcast. And then I would love to do more of this. It's like unlocking so many of my like parts of the brain. And then I think one of the core premise of this podcast is that interdisciplinary thing, and I think
Mm.
that's where we are heading. It's not just like being specialized in one thing. You think through like more, and then you have that personality, and you kind of bring that in this podcast. So I really appreciate you being here and making time to come here. And I know you have a busy you know busy schedule, but yeah, thank you for making time, and I really appreciate you having me here.
Thank you, John.
Yeah,
This was fun.
yeah, this is fun. Thank you.
Thank you.